I think for me, a good approach is someone that obviously I know you want investment, so you're gonna reach out to me for that. But I also don't want you to feel like you're desperate for investment, if that makes
Mm.
sense. I still want to feel like you're running your business because what I've noticed is a lot of people are now treating investment like it's a full-time job. And then they kind of neglect that they're still running a business during that process. So I still want to know that you're doing what you need to do to keep the business going, and that even if you don't get investment, you'll still make it happen. You'll still make it happen.
Hello. So today we have George Osei-Oppong Jr. Into the podcast. George is 29 years old from South London, and despite his relatively young age, he's already been a serial investor to over 200 companies, ranging from established names to startups. He is the CEO of Host Help, a cloud services provider that helps businesses of all size optimize their digital infrastructure. He is also passionate about empowering individuals and communities through education and mentorship. Welcome, George, and thank you for being part of this podcast.
Yeah, no problem, man. Thanks, Dave. How you doing?
Good, thanks. Yes, thanks for asking. So just to introduce what I'm doing, it's a podcast for
Yep.
founders who want to raise investment or they're thinking
Okay.
about it. And
Right.
it's really interesting because I've had a couple of other people on the show that have seen it from both sides. They've been an investor and they've been a founder. So I'd
Yep.
love to speak to you about both sides of that and
Yep.
how it's
That's fine.
influenced you in your business and in your investment choices.
Yep.
So really, I'd like to start then about your start as a founder and how you
hmm
started the company. How did that come about, and how did you get to the point where you thought I need investment?
Yeah, so we actually didn't found the company. We bought this company in 2021. So there was a founder in the US that had this company, and he was like a content creator. He was creating content. He built this business around that, and it was basically a web hosting affiliate company. So it was basically getting commissions for forwarding people to web hosting companies. He was an affiliate for Bluehost, SiteGround, and Liquid Web at the time. So I identified the company. I looked into the company with my partner and my business partner, and she thought it'd be a good idea. I thought it'd be a good idea as well. I've been in tech for about 10 years plus, so I have a fair bit of understanding of what we needed to do. And because I thought it would be passive income, so we took on the company. We spent about 6 to 8 months building the team. I think we had about 30 people initially. We cut that down drastically. And I guess people left as well as the company was going, it was letting people go. And we kind of went for a little restructuring and niched it down a bit more. We changed how the company was structured. So initially it was a web hosting affiliate, like I said, now it's a cloud service provider. So that took us, I would say, the better part of a year and a half to really get to that point. Um, we looked at ways of, I guess, pushing the affiliate side of things, and we just felt like the traffic that we was getting to the site, things were changing, so we decided to kind of change the trajectory of the business. So yeah, that's kind of how it all came about. That was in 2021 February, and we're in 2023 now. So yeah.
Mm. So I guess it raises the question. I'm from what you said. I was assuming that you were a
Mhm.
founder first, but maybe it's the other way around. You were an investor first. Is that right? Tell us about that then.
Yeah, definitely an investor first. So I have started businesses. So I started my first networking business, computer networking business when I was 18. And then I was providing services to companies like GMI, which then got acquired by Lightspeed, and then I ended up at IBM. So I've done some work at Sainsbury's, IBM, Nationwide, Capgemini, a few blue chips. And then I actually went on to permanent at Nationwide at some point, went on to permanent at IBM at some point. So I had about a 4 year stint of working permanently. But during that time, so I've been during that time I was studying investing for a while, and then I started studying investing in college, and then pulled the trigger about 6 years ago. I started doing a lot more investing then. So I had a few other businesses after that. I was doing, I had a car dealership. I was buying and selling cars. I then also started a hair care business during that time. So I founded other companies, but Whole Stop, we bought the company because truth be told, we generally thought it would be passive income. We didn't imagine that it will be what it is now, and having to do what we're doing now for the business. So yeah.
Wow, it's amazing that you've done so much at a young age. I mean, where did that passion come from for being such an entrepreneur and trying so many different businesses?
Truthfully, I wanted to make money.
Mm.
And I think I wanted to make money in a way where I was excited about making money, and also excited about what I was doing. I always felt like the two should go hand in hand. So I was passionate about everything I've been passionate about, I've done. So passionate about cars. I started driving when I was 18. I looked into how to buy and sell cars. I worked very closely with mechanics. So I started going to auctions, started buying cars, fixing them, selling them, and I learned the process that way. So then there was that. I started growing my hair in like 2017. Wanted to get more organic products, so I started creating it myself. Started the business from there. And then, so yeah, all of these like types of things, it's what I'm really passionate about. I want to monetize. And being in tech, my dad used to show me how to fix TVs when I was in primary school. So I was doing a lot of that with him. He'll go to his friends' houses. They'll always ask him because it was like a handyman in electronics and whatnot. So I'd be going around with him. Sometimes he'll charge, sometimes it wouldn't, depend on what's going on. So I was always passionate about these things. Obviously, I would go into tech. So then, yeah, I started getting paid being in technology, and that was, yeah, it's just kind of always been a thing for me to just do things that I'm excited about, and then if I can monetize it as well to kind of help keep the lights on and fund my life, then it's great.
Wow, interesting. So, do you think your father was a big inspiration for doing what you're doing? Was he a self-starter, an entrepreneur?
No, he wasn't, but he was quite active. He had a lot of energy. Yeah,
Right.
so he obviously grew up in Ghana, in a village. He then managed to end up at Ghana High Commission, where he was working there with like I guess government diplomats, etc. He then came here, and then he was also doing more work, like driving around diplomats, etc. And then he just became a bus driver, and he just loves driving. So that's his thing. He just does what he loves, similar to our mum as well. She loves caring for people. She became a nurse. Then she went back to university while I was grown. And probably not the best time for her to do it, but she done it anyway. Quit her job. She was working in a nursing home for a while, quit her job, and then she went back to university. And then yeah, she became a private nurse, and then yeah, so it's kind of like both of them have kind of followed and done what they enjoyed, and they've done stuff back in Ghana as well. My mum had like a taxi business as well. She bought taxis for my grandma, and basically, to kind of fund them, she bought a house out there, and my dad's done something similar. He bought a house out there as well, and he's built houses since then. So they've done a lot of like things, but they haven't been entrepreneurs first. They've had jobs because I guess that was what they learned back then, but they also done stuff outside of that.
Mm. Yes, fascinating to hear that and the people's backgrounds. And you're saying that you were studying investing. So what sort of form did that take? Was that official educational courses, or was it more
No,
off
no.
your own back, or how did you
Yeah.
do that?
Do you know what? I always rack my brain and try to think how I found it. But I remember in college, I came across Hargreaves and Lansdowne, and then they started sending me letters, like newsletters on investing and SIPPs, etc. So I ended up like going to a rabbit hole of understanding what a self-invested pension is, what an ISA is, what different types of savings accounts is, what a fund and share account, what all of these like little things are. And then I started building my watch list since I was in college. So all the companies that I'll see, I'll look at and I'll say, okay, cool. I'll start going through their accounts, and I just got really interested in it because I've always said from a young age, I've been told that I wanted to be an investor and be a business owner. That I was saying that from young, but I think mainly because I had uncles and aunties that my auntie has quite a few properties. My uncle used to have a shipping company. So like everybody around me, like thinking about it more and more now, everyone around me had something. They had shops, they had businesses, they all worked for themselves most of the time, or like they just had high careers. So, but yeah, no, I got into investing just through those newsletters. I started build like I said, I started building my watch list, and then I literally loaded my watch list of like 200 companies at some point. I was just watching numbers go up and down. I was, every time there'll be a news report about them, I'll check. And then through the app, through Hugs and Lands, app, I was able to see a lot of new updates and see all the metrics and whatnot. So I just kind of got a bit more. The more information I saw, the more little buzzwords and little metrics I wanted to learn and understand, like what's the PE ratio, what's the price to sell. So all of these little things I started looking into and understanding. The more and more that I understood it, the more like financially literate I got around investing. Yeah, yeah.
So what was the platform that you invested in on then? What was it called?
Hargreaves and Lansdown.
Okay.
Hargreaves Lansdown.
I don't know that one, but then I'm not an investor. So you're talking about maybe small amounts. Of what was the sort of amounts of money that you were putting into it and getting out? And I presume you were reinvesting as well, were you?
Yeah. So I haven't actually really taken anything out.
Right.
Mostly through dividends. I tend to get a lot of the money, and like 5-figure investments in these companies. 4-5-figure investments. So I think some of the companies I've taken money out of is probably like Tesla. Took some money out of British where is it?
British American Tobacco.
Yeah. I took some money out of them. Moderna, a few companies. So yeah, when COVID happened and it went down, I invested quite a bit. And then when prices went back up, I got to take some money out, but I reinvested into a few other stocks at that point.
Very interesting. So you were doing this, I guess you're still doing it now, but between sort of the ages of 18 and 27, you were able to amass enough money that you could buy the company Host Hub. Is that how it came about?
Yeah. So my mom always told me to make sure that I save money. That's one thing that she kept on telling me. But I didn't really want to just save money and have it for a rainy day, because when a rainy day comes, you end up losing that rainy day fund. So I needed to find ways to make more money and make more money that way. So I had my son in September 2020, and that threw a lot of things into perspective, because I had contracts in place with companies, and I started looking at ways that I could free up my time and still do what I like and be around my son, be around my family on a more, I guess, physical presence basis. And I think that kind of happened when I was at a contract at an investment company, actually, a private investment company, and they basically I had a liaison of one of my colleagues there, and he had a son. I mean, he had a kid, and then I think he only had like 2 weeks paternity, and that kind of threw a lot of things into perspective for me at that time. So when my son was being born, I started looking for companies. I started looking for other ways to earn income without having to take on contracts, and because they demand a lot of my time. So yeah, I kind of me and my partner looked, and we went 50-50 and we bought the company.
Oh, and would you reveal how much you paid for the company? Or is that a secret? I don't mind if it's I'm just sprung it on you, but if that's a secret bit of information, you don't have to reveal it.
Yeah, no, it wasn't a crazy amount, but it was reasonable. Yeah, it was reasonable. We got it for a fair price.
Yeah.
I mean, we was lucky because the founder he has a portfolio of about 25 or so companies. And he was letting some companies go because I think a life-changing situation happened, so he wouldn't be able to be as hands-on anymore. So he was letting some companies go.
Okay, this might be interesting for some of the listeners who potentially are thinking about selling their company, or it is also relevant for them looking for investment. So what were the metrics you looked at with that company, and how did they present those to you for the sale?
So obviously, there was a deck provided, and then I also got access to, because the company is mainly based, it's an online business. So a lot of the metrics were online, luckily for me. So I could see the traffic, I could see what they're making, I could see all the financial statements and things like that, and kind of see what they're spending on, what the cost of sales are, and how they're actually generating money. Because my main thing going into this purchase was, are they making money, and how are they making money, and how can I make money on the long term? So there was historic data that I looked at, and there was present data that I looked at, and there was also some recommendations from the previous founder on what we could do next. So those are the type of things that I looked at. And then obviously you're going to need to do your due diligence with your accountants or whoever you're around to kind of help you understand what the financials look like. But for me, my main thing was, what's the company health? What do things look like for the business? So I looked at everything holistically. We bought the company and also got a YouTube channel alongside, attached to the business as well. So I needed to see everything at that point. And
was that part of your decision to buy it, that the YouTube channel was strong?
Yeah, because at the time the YouTube was the only way that they was making, was the primary way that they was making money, because they was driving leads through the YouTube. So they'll create videos, and then those videos will have affiliate links in them, but they'll also drive traffic back to their website. So they was getting multiple sales from different videos.
So that was a space that you knew?
Yeah, of course, definitely.
Yeah, so that influenced you in your purchase, right?
Yeah, definitely. Because I think for me, my type of thinking always tends to be around almost like owning the supply chain, if that makes sense. Because if I bought the business and I didn't have the YouTube channel, he could just close it and then there's no sales. Because after we bought the business, the company was still making money. But then at some point it plummeted because we wasn't continuously making content. That's what made us start to think about how we're going to position the company moving forward. How do you make it a longevity business? And hence why the cloud stuff came in and where we are now.
And how has the YouTube channel changed since you've taken over the company?
So we haven't actually done anything else with the channel, because the way that the company's changed now, our customers don't come through YouTube. We work with a lot of startups, entrepreneurs, and small businesses. A lot of those are in my network already. So because of my work with startups, because of my work with entrepreneurs and a lot of small businesses, in our first month of launching our cloud, we signed about 30 plus clients, and now we're hosting about over 50 or so clients at the moment on our hosting. So, and obviously we have other platforms since then. We've built analytics platform, cloud storage, a few other things as well. We have about hundreds of clients signed up on those platforms as well. So mostly because of the work that I do and the work that my partner is also involved in, and a few other partners in the business, we're able to just leverage our network, and we've grown quite organically at that point. And I think now is that, I guess, leading to your question initially about what made us think about investment, we got to a point this year where we felt like we wanted to grow, and we was looking at what would be the quickest way to grow, but also grow sustainably. And we looked at maybe getting investment to do that. So we kind of had to look at our options, if we could still bootstrap it, because we've been bootstrapping the whole time. We haven't taken an investment even to buy the business. It was all personal funds. And we used a lot of our personal funds to get the business to where it is now. And we only started making real money probably like last year, September. So think about it, we bought the business in 2021. We've been funding the business since then. And only in 2022, September, is when we actually started making money. And we're in profit now, which is great. But it took us a while to kind of understand, because we had to invest a lot of money. We've got about 7 platforms now, including our main site. So there's a lot of work that had to go into that.
I guess including you yourself stepping in as CEO, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Because that wasn't the original plan.
No, it was never the plan. I think for me, the main thing was, I'm investing, you turn 1 into 2 and you just keep it moving. That's really the idea. But I had to no one was gonna come and help me, because at that point we spent the money. We need to make sure that we can make the money back. And also I've just had a son. How am I gonna live my life without any income? So yeah, I had to really make a tough decision, and I guess on continuing to that, I still had to take some contracts along on the side while I was trying to build this and get it to where it was. And I just took a leap of faith in September and just closed all my contracts and said, I'm just going to focus on this purely. And that was probably the best decision that I made, because since I did that, I've had to there's something that your brain does when you're faced in a situation where you have no other choice. You have to really think yourself through these situations. And luckily, through the investment background, I was able to look at how other companies have, weathered financial storms and how they've actually been able to weather their own financial issues within the business and still being able to emerge and keep going. And you just have to stay the course. That was very important.
Okay, you said something there about you closed contracts. So is that to do with other investments that you had at the time?
No. So the parent company of Hostelp, which is the vehicle that we use to buy Hostelp, is basically a consultancy. So I was still doing project management, tech consulting, and also tech support for other businesses. So I had contracts in place with those businesses. So I basically terminated those contracts in September to just focus on Hostelp solely.
Okay, and you said that was the focus. And putting everything into that really helped you to turn a profit 2 years ago.
Yeah, definitely. Because I think if I didn't, because there's almost this thing of like being 1 foot in and 1 foot out, because you're 1 foot into the business, but you also have other things that are keeping you afloat. When you then realize, when you take that away and you just have to deal with this, you then have to float. Like it's sink or swim at that point, and you can't. For me, I couldn't sink because I had so much pressure on me, so I really had to make it happen. But I only did that because of my partner, because of how supportive my partner is, and I knew that it was going to be difficult. So I'm not going to sell it like it was easy. I'm still dealing with stuff now, but I had to do it because I felt like if I didn't do it, then I'd have had to just continue doing what I was doing, and I wasn't, excited about it anymore. And I had to really make that leap.
Okay, so now you've got the business in profit and you're in a much stronger position. Are you still thinking about getting investment for it?
It's funny because I sat down with an investor a week or two ago actually, and he wants to know the business, wants to know the ins and outs, how the business is run, the operations, etc., what we're looking like, what our pipeline looks like, and all of these things that investors ask. And we both ended up on the same page of you don't need investment. Like what we really need is more clients but that's the difficult thing because sometimes the investment can help you push your outbound reach so that you can get more clients. But then the way we looked at it is if we just make some small tweaks and changes, we could potentially have a larger influx of clients because we recently brought on a business developer who has a massive network. And he has been making introductions with different people for like different business owners, etc., that would need our services. So that's also helped us quite a bit. So now that we're growing, we've grown to a point where it's like, if we did take investment, it would just be for security, if that makes sense. So it would be for us to have an influx of cash available. But then it's like, I don't really want to do that because it's unnecessary. We would give away equity at that point. We'll probably be better off taking a loan, and instead of going down the investment route, depending on if we had an investor that wants to come on board and actually be active. But then would we want that? Because most of the time investors will invest and they want their return quickly, or they want you to start doing stuff that might not fit with what you're trying to do. So for us, we want to grow in a way that obviously is sustainable and works best for our company, if that makes sense.
Oh, totally, yeah. And it's really interesting the fact that you did all the work to get your pitch deck presentation together, you did all the outreach work to get the investor, and I do want to talk about that process. But the fact is you went through all that and you had to sit down with the investor, and you both of you together came to the conclusion that that investment was not ready at that time.
No. Yeah. We mutually agreed. And then the interesting thing about it is he actually has offered to come on board and kind of help us still build. So, I mean, the investment is not 100% off the table right now.
Yeah.
But Just the wires, fine. Yeah, the investment is not 100% off the table now, but we want to do a lot more groundwork to get to that point where we feel like if we still need investment later, it's still open to us, basically.
Yeah, so there's a lot I want to talk about that actually. So one, let's just talk about how you were able to find and attract and convince that investor just to sit down with you. How did that process come about?
So it actually came about through our business development manager, and he already knew this investor. And since he's been working with us, for about 3 or 4 months now. And he's been making those introductions. So when I just randomly hit him one day and said, you know what, we're looking for investors because I feel like this is what we need to take the business to the next level. That's what I truly felt like at that point. And he was like, okay, well, I know some angel investors. I'll reach out to them and let's see what we can do. And then that's how it was. But prior to that, we've been reached out to like by private equity firms, some wealth management firms as well, and some VCs. I think in the US, we've had some conversations. And obviously, I have a network of investors because I invest myself. I know investors, and I've had conversations with them. And just all the conversations we was having was around, how quickly can we bring the money back? How much can we make? Like all of these questions were not really focused on what I want the business to be focused on, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because for us, our focus is on helping entrepreneurs, startups, and small businesses to be able to build, scale, start, build, and scale. That's our thing. So we have these platforms. We're creating an ecosystem of platforms to allow people to be able to come on and get enterprise-grade solutions for a lower price, if that makes sense. Because of my background, I've been able to formulate these platforms and products for our customers to be able to help them with, instead of going to Microsoft or whoever, they can come to us and we'll be able to help them to do and I guess scale their business. So I think how I've explained our business most of the time to these investors, they've seen the opportunity 100%. That's why we've had multiple conversations, but it wasn't a fit because of where their mindset is, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So the investor that you spoke to came through a personal introduction. What was the investor's background?
Correct.
What was his?
So he's a financial director. So
okay, so there's a bit of a delay. Yeah. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
He was a financial director. So, and what sort of level of investor? What sort of level of funding was he looking at?
I mean, our funding round, we was planning to go for $1 million. That was our plan, to really help us with more staffing, marketing, and I guess product development and a few other things. His ticket sizes are normally around between 50 to 100, but he also wants to bring in a few others to kind of help us close the round, if that makes sense, because he's been doing a lot of angel investing since he was part of a company and then he exited. So he had some money available, and also with a few other of his friends and partners, etc. They also had funds available, so they was all gonna come in together and basically close the round.
So I want to talk now about your role as an investor, and I want to talk about if you've had, I don't know if this happens to you or not, but how do people approach you as an individual and try to convince you to invest in their business? Or does it happen?
I'm getting a lot of LinkedIn messages. I get flooded on my LinkedIn, and the email attached to my LinkedIn gets flooded as well. Just with a lot of pitch decks, a lot of different messaging, but quite the same. So like, they'll start telling me about the business they want to connect, and then once we connect, they send me their pitch deck. Am I interested in investing, etc., etc. I've had a few conversations with a few businesses that have approached me that way, and because I'm so active on LinkedIn most of the time, I do check through all my messages and see what's interesting and what I like, or who I would like to speak to. But I think there's still a lot of there's a lot of automation there. I think like people send out messages to like bulk investors, and then they all come with the same type of. I've had people, and the reason why I know this is because they will use different things from my portfolio. So like I've had like an education background, where I've done an apprenticeship at QA, and then I've had people reach out to me saying, I love your work at QA. I'm like, well, I didn't work there. I had education there. So like, yeah, there's a lot of automation that I think, yeah, a lot of that happens. But then some people get it right. They message me. It's quite personal. We have a conversation on LinkedIn. I think last year I had conversations with everyone. I wouldn't speak to everybody because I felt like, there's opportunity everywhere. But this year I've really cut down the meetings. I've tried to pre-qualify in messages as much as possible before I even get to the point of having that conversation, because I can't read 1,000 pitch decks myself. I don't have a team who reads my investments for me. So I have to select the handful of ones that I really feel like make sense and then have a conversation with them.
And what makes a good approach versus a bad approach?
I think for me, a good approach is someone that, obviously, I know you want investment, so you're gonna reach out to me for that. But I also don't want you to feel like you're desperate for investment, if that makes sense. I still want to feel like you're running your business, because what I've noticed is a lot of people are now treating investment like it's a full-time job. And then they kind of neglect that they're still running a business during that process. So I still want to know that you're doing what you need to do to keep the business going, and that even if you don't get investment, you'll still make it happen. Things like that are really important to me. So yeah, when you approach me, when I'm being approached, I look for that personal touch. And I try to really look out for when I'm seeing bot messages. If I see any bot message that doesn't align with anything on our portfolio, I just decline it. I'll still accept you to connect, but I won't reply to the message.
Is there, other than LinkedIn, is there any other databases or networks that you're a part of, which is a good way to connect to you and to learn a bit about you?
Oh, that's a good question. I'm in a lot of groups. I'm in a lot of like different types of groups. So I'm in like property groups. I'm in some investor groups, but I'm trying to think of a group apart from LinkedIn. I don't feel like there is.
It's all
I don't feel
LinkedIn.
like, yeah, it's mostly LinkedIn. Obviously, some people have my email, and I'm with some incubators, so that helps as well. So I meet founders directly. So I recently was doing some work at Block Dojo, which is a Web3 incubator, and I was a mentor there. So a lot of the companies that will come in, I would mentor some of them, and I'll kind of help them through their funding raise and help them get ready for funding as well. So that was something that I was doing. But apart from that, no. What type of platforms are there for something like that? I've never
There's
thought
quite
about
a few.
it.
I mean, one of the big ones that a lot of investors are on is Crunchbase.
Oh, right. Okay,
having
okay.
a strategy to reach out on that, because I think from a founder's, I mean, you've seen it from both sides, right? So you know that there has to be some element of making the process efficient and trying to reach out to as many investors as possible versus the time it takes to personalize each message. So do you have any advice on how that can be made more efficient?
I think one tool that my company's been using recently is Apollo. And Apollo is quite good because you can set up sequences, but it can also be personalized. So you can have certain things like placeholders for their name, their industry, their company name, things like that you can use to make messaging a bit more personalized. And you can also send bulk emails that way as well. So I think that's quite good. And you can also do LinkedIn outreach through that as well, and they won't get the wrong information or get the up-to-date information, if that makes sense. And I think, to be honest, if I'm honest with you, I think you can still be personal if you're shooting to a lot of investors, because when I remember when I was like 16 and I didn't have I was trying to look for a job. I remember sending a job. There's no way to mass send out applications. You have to send one each to each person, and I was doing that hundreds a day. So I think it just depends on how determined you are. You don't have to send emails every single day, and you don't need 1,000 investors to invest in your business. You're only going to need a couple really that will have the funding to be able to do what you need. And most of the time, an investor will have a network or will have other investors that will probably want to come in with them as well. So you have to be strategic. You have to be strategic with that.
Yeah, that's been a common theme of these podcast interviews, that investors do recommend stuff to other investors, and once you connect with one,
Yep.
it's not just one that you're connecting with, it is potentially more and more. So it can branch out, and even though it seems, a bit futile reaching out to only 100, it can actually equate to a hell of a lot more with their connections.
Yeah. Yeah,
Cool.
exactly. I think that's important. Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. What I want to talk about also is sort of time scales and typical things like that, because I think a lot of founders that I spoke to they might not be in for that. There might be a bit of a shock of the time scale it takes, and it can take a few months, or it can take even longer. What's your experience of raising from both sides, being the companies that you've invested in and doing your own raise? What sort of time scale did you put on that?
I think for companies that I've invested in, when I've looked at some of the time frames, it's normally been around, like, they look to close within 6 months of them launching it, which I think makes sense because it can be quite a strenuous process when you're having a lot of meetings, etc. You need to think about how much strain that's going to have in the day-to-day operations actually running your business. Because I know firsthand that having meetings back to back, week on end is going to be very hard for you to run your business. So you don't want to do that for 2 years straight. You're going to want to do that for a short period of time, lock in the capital, and then close within the 6 months period, definitely. And that's on both sides.
Cool. So, and you're saying that's a kind of typical time period engagement from initial approach to actually the funds being received or sent?
Yeah, definitely. I think because there's been times when I've looked at investments, and due diligence will take you sometimes, depending on how quickly you can get the information, maybe about 3 months or so. So if you're able to engage investors quite quickly, within that first month or so, take a couple of months to really, you're going to have a series of conversations, and then they're going to need to do due diligence. So within that 6 months period, you should be able to start to finish within that time period.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think a lot of founders might not realize that it can take that long, and and I always say to them, if you're,
and it can take long.
Yeah, they can take longer. But I'm always sort of saying, if you're in a position where the lights are going to go out in 2 months without investment, you already left it too late, right?
Yeah, 100%. And that's the thing. That's why, for me, I look at investment differently to how a lot of other people look at investment. I look at it as something to help your company get bigger. So if you've already got a foundation, already earning money, then it's a case of you trying to, I guess, pull the future closer, if that makes sense. So you would get there anyway in the next 10 years, for example, if you kept on doing what you're doing. But you getting an investor or getting investment can sometimes shorten that time frame to maybe 5 years, because you have the funding available now, then instead of you having to build that over the time period. And I also look at it as, if I can't make a sustainable amount of money in my company, then me getting investment might not be the best thing for me, because it could actually end up really bad, and you could lose other people's money as well in the process. So you really need to have a strong business, a business that's got a proven track record of at least maybe a year or two of you proving that people actually want what you're selling, or they want your products, they want your services, and you're able to still keep growing even without the investment. I think for me that's the most important thing ever, that you will still make it without the investment.
Okay, well, some brilliant pieces of advice. I'd love to keep talking for longer, but we're almost running out of time. So is there anything before we leave, is there maybe two or three pieces of real mega important advice that you'd give to someone that's looking to raise in 2023?
Yeah, I think one of the most important things is that when investors are looking to invest in a company, they look at the founders. So you need to make sure that, It's similar to like a job interview. When you go for a job, they want to make sure they're hiring the best candidate for that role. So an investor wants to know that he's getting a great company and also a great founder, because your company might not work, but you as a person, if you're a great entrepreneur, you can come up with something else. And that's why they like to invest in you at that process. I think that's very important. And also knowing who you are in the sense of, are you a leader or are you a manager? Because that's also important. Once when an investor actually wants to invest, they want to know if you're going to be able to lead your company, or if it's going to be a case where, you know, they're going to have someone that's going to be so looking into their company so much that they're not going to be able to see what's happening on the horizon. I think that's also important. And I think the last thing is, you know, make sure that as much as you need the investment, don't make it known that you need it in a desperate way. Like, you know, be confident in your business. One of the things that throws people off investment sometimes is they feel like, you know, if somebody is desperate, then when they get the money, they might just see that as an achievement and not focus on the business anymore. So you need to be confident in your business that, you know, again, going back to regardless of the investment, I'm going to make it. And that kind of mentality is what makes people really excited to invest. A confident founder is something that, you know, investors love.
Yeah, and it's more a case of like investment's not the end, it's the start, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think I think you've probably seen it yourself as well. I mean, you do a lot of this stuff, and you know, some founders see the investment as the goal. Like once they've got the investment, they're excited, they have a party, they celebrate. When it's like that is just a vehicle to help you actually build the business. Don't forget that once you've got that investment, you still have a company to build. You know, you still need to, you know, answer to investors. You still got capital you need to return. And the fun of having a business is being able to be self-sustainable. You don't want to have to keep going for funding over and over and over again. You want to be able to get that investment, turn your business into a self-sustainable business, and then if you do get investment, it's maybe to do something crazy or to like extremely revolutionize your market.
Okay, well, that's some brilliant advice. Thank you so much for your time. I know you're very busy with all the investments and projects you've got going on and businesses. So thank you so much. Some brilliant pieces of advice. And let's talk again sometime soon.
Yeah, definitely, man. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.